All right. Hello, everyone. I'm AJ, Technical Content Lead here at Augment, and we're starting a series where we're bringing on real senior engineers and staff engineers and show how they're actually coding with AI. It's a chance to see how they work and ask them questions directly. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll try read them out. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Sam Breed. Sam was previously a senior staff engineer at Credit Karma and now a partner at Sutter Hill Ventures. He's one of the lead engineers building the Intent app, and he was actually part of Augment when it was just Igor, one of our founders. So yeah, very excited to bring on Sam today. I'm really interested to see how he's using Intent. I'm trying to get the most out of it myself, and I'm sure a lot of you in the audience are as well. And yeah, I encourage you, if you have any questions, to please drop them in the chat, and me and Sam will answer them as they come through. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. How was that intro? Is there anything I missed that you'd like to add?
Oh, no, that was perfect, AJ. Thanks. Yeah, really happy to be here. And yeah, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna build some websites.
Awesome. So yeah, let's jump straight into it. Should I bring your screen on stage here?
Yeah. So I'll set a little bit of context while we're
Okay.
getting set here. So this is actually like a real world task that I did in the last week or so. And we're gonna be taking a design that a designer made fully comped out in Figma. It's got maybe 10 pages, some design system stuff, and using the Figma MCP integration and intent, we're going to be able to pull a bunch of content directly into the context for intent to go. And oh no, did my camera just die? Of course.
Yeah, you've went black, but we still see the share screen.
Okay, cool. One second, my
No
bad, man.
problem. I'll just shout out to Miss MVA Robert from Minneapolis. Also have someone from Moldova, Nico. Warren Grum asking when the Windows version of Intent is coming. A lot of demand for that. Hopefully, Sam maybe can give more insight on that. I know it's coming eventually.
Yeah, it's in progress. Absolutely. Okay, so I'll futz with the camera in just a moment. Okay, here we go. Okay, backup.
There we go.
Always have a backup. Hot spare. Cool. So yeah, so we've got a Figma MCP. We've got that running. It's already connected. So if you're curious about how that works, if you go into workspace setup, you can turn on the custom MCP servers. I've got two configured, one for Vercel and another for Figma. The Figma setup is you still have to set it up as a custom MCP, and Figma makes this URL really, really hard to find. So you have to search their docs for it. It's localhost 3845/MCP. Okay, so
I think I have some alpha on the Figma MCP. The remote one is coming for augment compatibility very soon, like this month.
Awesome.
But yeah, sorry, continue.
Okay, cool. Okay, my bad. Let's see. Let me get a prompt sheet up here so we don't have to watch me type. Okay, so we're going to do some visual design. We're going to take a look at the Figma MCP and start by adding some custom colors to the Tailwind config. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over into Figma and I'm going to right-click on some frames and copy links to their selections. And that way, this is kind of like, right now it's the way that you can kind of put context directly from artboards or layers or whatever from Figma into their MCP integration. Hopefully in the future, you can just say what you want. But right now there's a little bit of manual shoveling back and forth. And so I'll show this project as we kind of get started. So we're kicking off a workspace. And, I've seeded this project with a little bit of stuff. Okay, PMPMI. And so for things like this, one of the techniques that I really like to do is, I have an idea in mind of how I want to build this project. I want to use Astro. I want to use Tailwind. There are a couple other things that I might want to have. I tend to do those first opening moves myself. One, because they're good generators for these things. And two, it kind of by seeding that context into the project with, what you want as a developer, you get an opportunity to have your opinions in there, and not just rely on whatever default is going to get spit out from weights. So right, there's a little bit of content here, Astro servers capable of running. And so while we've been doing that, intent has been off pulling this context directly from Figma. It found that, hey, there's this, design system layer. There are a bunch of custom colors in it. And it sees that it's Tailwind v4. It's not going to try to write a Tailwind v3 file. And so it wrote a little bit of a little spec here to kind of like do this. So we'll approve the plan, start the implementation, and yeah, we're off to the races. This is going to start firing off agents. Yeah.
Can I
Any
double
questions so
click?
far?
Yeah, double click on the part you just said about manually setting it up. Is that just mentioning the frameworks inside your prompt, or do you actually run like init commands to initialize?
So in this case, I just ran the init commands. That seems to be like, a lot of the times, right, with models, even with the ability to pull context from the internet, right? Like the training data is potentially, months old. So especially for like frameworks where you want to be getting the latest versions of things, you want to be patched all the way to the top. You don't want to be getting, choices that are maybe kind of just buried like deeply, kind of in the weights from 6 months ago. So I like doing that. Especially for new projects too, it kind of like gives me a little bit of, those kind of initial first opening moves. They're almost always the same. So
yeah,
like, the project initializers are pretty good.
We have one question from the chat here. It says, can we touch on agent access security / sandboxing? How do you prevent an agent from silently editing files outside the workspace?
I've never seen it do that. So context background on, so I've been using AI for code since about 2021. So I joined Sutter in 2020 to help work on prototypes around GPT-3 and what, was kind of the pending wave of AI that, we've seen happen over the past 4 or 5 years. So one, I guess starting about just like sensible defaults. Default, I use Auggie for everything. Auggie is running in the scope in the directory. It's exceptionally well prompted, and I'm using, the kind of top of the frontier models. I'm not using, Haiku to do this. I'm not using, so like an old fast model, or I'm not using, what's possible in intent is to use something like open code that gives you even the ability to do local inference. So perhaps with some of those, I would be more concerned about sandboxing. But as a practical matter, I've never had any problems with sandboxing in now several years of writing code with AI in basically every conceivable way. And so, yeah, so I'm team YOLO. I think the dangerously skip permissions thing should just be on by default.
Nice. And they are in Auggie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no safety. You're playing with live rounds here. Cool. So yeah, so now we can move on to the next step. So this is done. There's not going to be really any side effects to look at on the website, but we can take a look at the commit that it wrote, which, pretty simple. Again, this isn't, rocket science to do, but it certainly saves a little bit of copying and pasting, from the Figma file. And so, but now the fun's really going to start, because this Figma file doesn't just have a bunch of design guidelines in it. It actually has like full content for 7-8 pages on a website. So and this is real prompts. Like I did this session a couple days ago, and like this was kind of like exactly how I arrived at like a working website. So we're doing it live. We're gonna see how this goes. Hopefully it's gonna work pretty well. So again, I'm going back over into Figma now, and I'm hitting Command L to grab the direct links to artboards. So let's see, the designer has a bunch of typography stuff and like suggested grid dimensions.
We got some asks to see the current Figma design, if that's possible to.
Yeah,
also share.
yeah. Let me stop sharing and switch screens. Share screen window.
Also, while you're doing that, I had a message here from Nikita. Says it'd be great if the isolated workspaces feature was optional. I think that is true. You can check mark like to use not a worktree. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So this is a little bit hard to find. It's it's in the submenu when you're selecting which branch to do. There's a checkbox at the bottom of that menu that says work directly in this branch. I was going to talk about that later in the stream. It's actually quite useful when you like tee something up, get it good, and then just want to make little minor edits using a workspace. But yeah, so onto the comp. This is the thing that I'm pulling things out of. We've got it in developer mode. So Shift D in Figma to flip back and forth between developer mode, which is actually really, really cool. They kind of like muted a bunch of the features and made it hard to like accidentally change stuff or, change the rotation on a thing when you're trying to grab its corner, the classic foibles that developers run into. So this was like the first frame that I grabbed. And yeah, let me zoom in here. It's got like some spacing conventions. It's got some custom colors. It's got some custom gradients. There's a bunch of really specific type annotations with like a licensed font. We'll be showing these a little bit later with like actually pulling in and integrating like the font assets here. We've got some kind of reusable components that are going to be common across pages and a grid system. And then, yeah, a bunch of content. I'll zoom out here and see. So like, when I was looking at doing this is like a landing page. This is maybe, I'm pretty fast. I could probably do this in like a day, maybe two, of like coding all of the markup, getting it responsive, making it like pulling all of the assets out. There's a bunch of little stuff in here. Like these guys are actually videos that like want to loop and like they go carousel on like mobile web. So it's like, it's a couple days of work if this is all you're doing and you're like real fast and have done this before. It's a lot of work if you like are trying to learn a framework while you're doing this. And yeah, so yeah, I was able to get in a few sessions with intent rip through this like a chainsaw. It was like 45 minutes and it was
Wow.
pretty functionally close. It was like 95%. And now the designer has intent and is iterating on the last 5% of all of the little knobs and screws. And this is a person who's never used Git before and was like, super enabled by this. Okay, cool. So I'll flip back to intent.
Awesome, yeah.
Share screen.
And if you can quickly show that checkbox, like we got another comment.
Yeah, I'll show where it is.
To
Word. So
see about the workspace option.
So yeah, on the home screen, if you're here, you click on your main branch, and there's this dude right down here. Work directly on the main branch. This also works like if you select other branches in the repository, you can work directly on those as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so work directly on the branch, and it says no worktree when you're doing this. Arguably, there should be maybe a bigger setting, more prominently, so you can just like turn worktree mode off entirely. But yeah,
for sure.
Cool.
We have a comment asking, can intent store the spec to Git?
Ooh. Can intent store the spec to Git? Yes, it can. So the spec files do end up on disk. So if you click this open in menu, you can open them in Finder or the editor of your choice. They are files in the home/intent directory. And you would need to move the spec files over into your repo. But if you wanted to have the spec be a long-term durable object, and yeah, the sub items are separate files with the sub specs.
Interesting. Maybe potentially could you symlink to have it live as well? I don't know. Maybe I'd get a bit more
I'd want to test that first.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd try it and see. We can type that in the box and see if it goes. Cool. So I had fat finger to click on a suggested prompt earlier. The fun of doing this live. So I need to tee this up a little bit more before we press go again. So we've got the first page, we've got the grid, we've got the typography.
It's all good.
Word.
While you do that, I think I can answer this question here. Can enterprises customize augment code with their internal frameworks? coding standards or domain specific knowledge. I think the general the standard for doing this is like an agents.md kind of file, or like the rules files. So in those files, we have it in our documentation as well where to put them. They'll always be included into context, so you can have all your coding standards, domain specific knowledge, and the agent will have that in context at all times. And by the way, guys, I forgot to mention intent with Augment Code is completely free right now with GPT 5.4. We're offering that for free for a limited time, so you don't need to use any credits or spend any money if you want to try intent or any Augment Code product for free with GPT 5.4. Sorry for cutting you off, Sam. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, all good. I was going to say, in answer to the enterprise question, mono repos perform great with Augment. So if you have a mono repo that has a bunch of different projects in it, has a bunch of documentation, has your internal coding standards, as well as on top of the kind of support of agents.md and other metaphors.
Yeah. The context engine and Augment really great for large mono repos. For people that just joined, Sam, do you want to give a refresh on kind of what we're working on here?
Yeah. So we're essentially building a website out from a Figma comp that we've got teed up in Figma with Figma MCP turned on, and we've seeded a project with some initializers for a couple of frameworks for Astro with Tailwind CSS, and we've got the first round done of some initial mise en place of setting things up, and now we've got the agent starting to cook on the first kind of page in the website. And the goal here is in the next 20-30 minutes to get a fully imagined thing out that is like pretty faithful to the comps that we had in Figma. And I'll flip back and forth to the Figma comp again as we kind of go through this.
Nice. Someone here has asked for the URL for intent app. It's just augmentcode.com/intent to get there.
Okay, cool. I heard the ding. So that means that It's time for me as the human in the loop to to pay attention. Cool. So let's see. We've got the full picture. We've started this. Okay, so it's added 4 tasks to the spec. It looked at the URLs to the design system that I sent. I'd also given it a note that like, hey, we're going to be adding the fonts later, so like just use placeholders for now, so that if the designer looks over my shoulder, he's not going to be like, my fonts aren't being used. You'd have to look a little bit more closely to that. I won't try to pull a fast one on them and just use system fonts, although that is a good trick. Cool. So yeah, let's go. You fall into one of 2 camps. You either like to read the plans or you like to see what they do. I'm more of a like, let's go. Sometimes I'll see something like glaringly wrong in the plan, and I'll either ask the coordinator to change it or go in and make edits myself. But like I said, kind of at the start of this is a I'm recreating kind of a speed run of a task that I did earlier last week or so. So I'm pretty high confidence that like these prompts are going to lead to some decent or at least exciting results.
Yeah, that kind of touches on a question from the chat that how do you iterate on the spec and the artifacts? Personally, like I found intent produces like this assumptions section, and that's like what kind of always needs the most attention. I'm not sure if you have one here, but yeah, there you go. So like sometimes there'll be some assumptions made that might not be aligned with what I intended. So yeah, that's kind of where I iterate the most on. But yeah, generally like I find the plans to be pretty good by themselves.
Yeah, same. And I think that there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either re-engage with a coordinator, say, hey, there's some things wrong with the plan, maybe you should change X, Y, and Z. Or you can make the edits yourself directly. I tend to favor the latter because the coordinator tends to write prompts that are a little bit more fully specified than I would be willing to write. It also touches a little bit on the kind of like working mental model for where intent works best. And I think that it's actually really shines on tasks that are of the size right now of like a PR, so of a single pull request, so like a repository. you can have really ambitious PRs that change hundreds of files and maybe have tens of thousands of changes, but those are a lot harder to evaluate and they maybe need a lot more planning. And so even in this, like, we're going to get probably 2 or 3 more steps here, and then we're going to jump out and make a new workspace. We're going to like merge this stuff and make a new workspace, because one is a reflection of the workflow that I would actually use, where I get to like a decent stopping point where adding to the plan is going to just result in like 40% of the plan being like rewritten or invalidated. And like, if you've been working with large language models for a long time, you kind of get these instincts, these second, kind of hunches about like where context is going to be the most useful. And, the less context, that is accurate, the better. Because if you have, even with a million token length context window, one, a million tokens is a lot of text. Like, it's easy to throw it around like, a million of stuff, it's an easy number to imagine maybe. But if you actually like printed out those tokens on paper, it's a stack of phone books that is like 2 meters tall. And like, do you need all that? And like, the models are obviously getting better and better with each generation, but keeping things on track and especially being like fast, right? Like, these models attend to everything in their context. So if you have a smaller, kind of set of context that you're bringing into the model and it's the right stuff, you're going to just get faster response times. It's going to have less opportunity, or will be less inclined to kind of wander off the path that you're trying to get it to go down.
Yeah. Speaking of models, we have a few questions here. Do you always use Opus? I want to know if you always use Opus. Do you have any opinions on different models?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, in technology, you often get these dichotomies. There's Vim versus Emacs. There's tabs versus spaces, and there's Opus versus Codex, or Claude Code versus OpenAI models. I think they are kind of tools that are very equally capable, and the subtleties come in with how you prompt them and how you use them. I've been using Claude models, as my kind of go-to for maybe the last like 2 years or so. I really think that the work that Claude did with like the 3.5 Sonnet release to get tool calling like good enough to the point where you can have an agent that goes off semi-autonomously and drives towards a task through a series of dozens of tool calls. Like, that was the first time I saw that like happen in a model, and it felt like, oh, this is the sign that like coding is now going from what it used to be to something new. And it took 2 years for that to kind of bear out. And I think that tool calling is the way to go. So like, yeah, Claude's my OG. I use Claude every day for everything. Although I try everything, right? Like, when the new models come out, like, it's really useful to go and try them, because look, faster and is better. And if you're fast and accurate, right, like, it's good enough. It's good enough for me. So I've been playing around with 5.4 this week, as we were kind of like pre-flighting it, testing it to go into intent, and it's real good. So if you've been using OpenAI models and are like pleased with them, like, you got more good stuff coming along the way. And I think that like competition is only going to drive this forward faster. So yeah, and try it for free in intent or other augment products.
Yeah. Got a question here. Can you change the ding sound in augment?
You can turn it off. And the built-in notifications also are capable of making a sound. Yes, we'll put that under consideration.
Yeah, there's definitely internally, I know some people don't like that sound too. So
yeah,
hopefully we can bring in some more options. I know someone that has like a plugin for the Warcraft, like Zug. Any more work available plugin for his agents?
Yeah, we could make it something fun. We could put a soundboard in there. I mean, that's a thing. We could probably just type that in the box and put a whole little synthesizer on that settings page.
Mm-hmm. Got a request to see the specialized agent setup. Do you have specialized agent setup, or do you just run with kind of what intent brings out of the box?
Yeah. So again, this kind of goes back to this other. There's endless debate about this stuff. I'm team don't mess with it. So, but that's also why I use intent, is because we have a lot of these things that are built in that are already exceptionally well prompted. And there are definitely ones in here that I use that I invoke directly. A really cool one that I've been using a lot over the past couple weeks is this PR shepherd. So currently this only works with Augment and with Augment code review. But essentially, you can, when you have an open pull request, and let's say it has some, CI things are failing, and you get some review comments either from humans or through automation, you can launch this specialist in an intent workspace, and it will basically long pull against the comment thread and will chase down a green pull request like the Terminator hunting for John Connor. So you can run this thing and it'll just like chirp away. The Augment code review bot is really, really good, and it makes oftentimes, very actionable suggestions. And so having that loop be really tight where those are getting addressed, and it leaves feedback on the comments too. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to push a commit and mark resolved. It's like it goes in, it makes a detailed comment. And this is a kind of an outgrowth of a skill that intent can just do. Like when you have the GitHub stuff wired up, like you can just ask the coordinator, be like, hey, are there any comments on this PR? Can you address them? And like, it'll write to the spec, it'll fire away. But that also involves you like typing in the box, kind of knowing the context, like, are there pull requests right now? So this is like part of the like SDLC that we're really excited about, like helping, smooth down and chamfer off like the rough edges. Because stuff like this just really like nails it. The UI designer prompt, this is another one that like Amelia wrote. So like the fun thing about prompts, and I think that like with the skills.sh, like, explosion of that ecosystem, like really shows this. It's like the best prompt is the one you didn't have to write yourself, that somebody else, just goes out and nails for you. And so, right, like part of this is being a discerning user of this is like spend enough time to think about these things, but you can over index on them. And the difference between like a pretty good prompt and a perfect prompt is like, I don't know, it's a limiting factor. Like you could spend a lot of time and not get, better results. And, more inference is probably the best way to get to better code rather than spending lots and lots of time specifying the perfect prompt.
Nice. We have a question on like when to use different models. Do you ever like switch between Haiku, Sonnet, or Opus, GPT?
Yeah, so like this is a question that I think is, in the past it used to be much more relevant. So in previous AI tools that I've worked on, and in like earlier runs at like this app before Opus 4.6, like December 2025 is a pretty memorable moment for like a step change in when everything got better. And full context, we've been working on intent since, before that. There was a couple months lead up when it was kind of going through a prototyping phase, and we were seeing, because we were all using Auggie CLI in, tmux with 6 splits panes and, writing down specs. So like this workflow grew out organically. And in those cases, it was absolutely like, hey, use a smart model to write the spec, use a fast model to verify it, use a decent, like middle of the road, like Sonnet, or, Codex 5.1, use one of those models with like medium thinking to, do the implementation. And then you put it in this, gracious feedback loop where, the verifier looks at it, the smart model writes the plan. It's kind of like a Gastown thing, or, what people are doing with Claude Code. And you can get a lot of, juice out of that, but it's kind of like tuning a carburetor or something in a car. Like there's a sweet spot to get into, and you kind of got to listen to it and like try a bunch of stuff. And like, it's a lot of time that when a good model comes along or a better model generation comes along, a lot of those concerns just evaporate, because like, a model like 5.4 or a model like Opus 4.6, they're just good at doing this stuff. They can go so fast, they can go so far, they can drive the specs really, really well. And I find that just staying in those models is the sweet spot, but that's also like different strokes for different folks. You can get this stuff done in a lot of different ways.
Nice. Did you want to show the progress?
Yeah. Sorry, I've been yapping away here. Let's
No,
see.
it's good. We have questions coming, and it's good to answer them. But
Yeah.
I guess we
So
should also go ahead.
cool. Hidden features. You can't see the keystrokes that I'm doing, but yeah, it's all of your favorite VS Code. Command J to dismiss the terminal. Command B to dismiss the sidebar. Especially when you're trying to like look at a browser. So okay, this like looks like a website. We've got, so what this has done, if you're just joining the stream, we have this comped out in Figma, where worked with a designer on this. They have 7 or 8 pages that has a bunch of content that's written out, that's kind of done in this pretty specific way. Right now there are a few things that like you can't see the Figma comp, I'm sorry, but like there are a few things that are like visually off, but we're going to address those. But it's been able to pull things like, colors for gradients. It's obviously not making like an all purple and, shad CN, kind of the tells. It used to be Bootstrap. Now it's shad and purple gradients that, you copied your homework from the open source repo. Cool. So like, I think we're doing pretty good on this. So we haven't started one task, and we have hotkeys up here in the corner. Another fun thing that like we have these views where you can see. Is that a bug? Come on. Okay, so we have views that you can see, like a tile view of like all of the agents that have launched in your chat, and these are like kind of the standard pane interactions that you would normally expect. But my favorite one is to just take me back to the planning spec when I've been like messing around and dragging tabs back and forth. It gives this 2-up view of like, here's everything that you've done. Here's the plan we've written so far. Here's the coordinator agent. Coordinator's a boss. He's the best person to talk to. Cool. So we looked at this and it's pretty good. Next up, we're going to have it break out the header and footer. Because we're going to go make some more pages. Like this page is okay, and we're going to address like the problems on that page. But the magic of working in an agent orchestration workspace like Intent is that you can do a bunch of stuff in parallel, especially when they're not, going to be writing, over top of the same lines in one file. So once again, I'm going to go back over to Figma, where I'm going to grab a link from a comp, and then full send, let's go. And then what I'm also going to do is tee up the next prompt, which is a fun thing that we have, where we can add tasks for and then queue them up. So I'm going to quick speed run through getting all the rest of these little dudes lined up. Okay, let's see.
Nice. We have a question about reviewing code output, checking that it follows your standards and guidelines, or how do you, or if do you review any code these days?
Yeah, yes, I review a lot of code these days. It is the thing that's exploding right now with our ability to write more is that we're writing a lot more code, and so. I do a mix of reviewing things in the application in Intent. Occasionally, I still will open an IDE, but a lot of my work now is capable to happen directly in Intent. So this is what we've got so far. So like I said, I preceded this project with a little bit of starting HTML, so I kind of had some stuff in distribution, like the way that I liked it, with showing some Tailwind classes here and there, stuff like this. And so, right, like this is an area of the app where we're like continuing to iterate, and we want to make this like the place where it's like nice to come and review code. And if you spend a lot of time in like GitHub pull requests, you'll know that there's room to grow. There's definitely nicer interfaces to be able to do things. So a lot of times, code review comes in a couple different flavors. One, there's just like looking at it and trying to do like a literate reading or an informed reading of the code. That's pretty good if you know you can keep the project in your head. If you have the theory of the program pretty crisp in your mind, that's good. Then the other side of code review is really more like validation and QA, which is like, do the things that need to run run. You know, do smoke tests run? Can you run the app? And so for an app like Intent that like we use every day and we're dog fooding really aggressively, like every time I get a pull request for Intent, I pull it down onto my local, put it in a Worktree, open it up, run the server, drive the app around. We have automation for this, but I also, you know, that's part of, I think, you know, having a good grasp of like whether the thing, you know, can you exercise this feature? Do you know what's changed? Do you know what to look for? You know, things like that. So for stuff like this, for like lighter weight, like web dev tasks, this is more like a vibes based thing. Like, okay, there's a bunch of content coming in here. It all looks good. You know, the dev server's already running, so I kind of know that. I'll do things like run, you know, lint and formatting. And one of the features that we're going to be integrating soon is like direct integration with like npm or node scripts or like scripts, make files, things that we can automatically detect, so that you can get affordance in the app for like running those things with one click instead of having to come into the terminal like a caveman and type, you know, pm. Probably have one of these things.
Sam, I'd love to double click on verification testing and specifically with worktrees. So personally, I think a lot of people are new to worktrees, and you know, when you first spin up a worktree, it doesn't have a lot of the things like maybe node modules or binaries installed. So I know there's like setup scripts. Is that what you use to get, you know, Intent ready to review once you spin up a worktree? And can you show us that flow?
Yeah, so the setup script flow, you know, the one thing that I can't show easily on stream because I'm only sharing one window at a time is that I usually roll with like 4 or 5 Intent windows open with different workspaces or different work trees. So like the Command Shift N open a new window to show something is just absolutely tattooed into my brain. But you can get to it from here too. Just Command N of the hotkey for creating a new workspace. So we have a bunch of pre-canned templates for these types of scripts. So it's a little bit hidden, or like on the homepage, you might miss it the first time that you look at the application. But when you go to launch a project, there's a button to, you know, choose the script. The default that we have is to copy config files. So, you know, if you have you know, .env file or you know, the other, you know, kind of you know, common culprits. For monorepo is really helpful to do that recursively, so you're not having to do this yourself. But there's also things like, you know, a script that will do the config file dance and then run pnpm install or npm with yarn or pip with Python, etc. You can also write your own. You can also generate them from the repo. Yeah, so it's you know, this is definitely a place where like the iteration loop might feel a little bit clunky right now. You know, those types of setup scripts arguably, you know, might be well suited if checked into your repo as something else that we can run. But there's absolutely a good way to like write durable automation for this that you can use every time, and you can, you know, kind of get access to like the path directories of that, you know, you're working with and stuff like that.
And I see a comment here, and this is something that I had to learn as well, is the kind of the locking or not being able to check out the same branch when you have it open in a work tree. Is there like some kind of mindset that someone has to adopt to be using this new way of work trees?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and that's tough because, right, like, you know, if you've been using Git for any length of time, like Git is a huge universe of stuff. Like I've been using Git since like 2008. I didn't know work trees were a thing until like last June. Right. So like they've been in there for a while too.
2015, I think.
Yeah. So only 11 years to get used to one of the hundreds of subcommands that you'll never ever run. So, right, like Git is already, you know, kind of a little bit to keep in your head. You know, version control is a thing that you develop a close personal relationship with because you run these commands day in and day out if you're doing software development, you know, full time. And so, yeah, so work trees are kind of weird and they take some getting used to for sure. I found that there's a learning curve that kind of once you get the comfort level of like, hey, this is in a work tree. I can't check it out to main. If I want to get it into main or I want to see it in another branch, my options are to merge it or, there is a force way to force the branches, but I've never ever used that.
Okay.
Because you can get disconnected heads basically where you have like the branches like won't sync easily. Like, so don't do it. But like, yeah. So that's what kind of like why we put the terminal, as a first class entity in here. And one, because like, and we put the work trees in a place that's, not cryptic, not, easy to discover. You can control the location of this directory too. And then also we give, some affordances like here at the top to be able to like quickly open this in any of your kind of like common apps or just copy the absolute path. And a fun thing, you can move the sidebar over. So like the mental model for work trees is kind of like, yeah, they're an isolated thing, spend time working in them, but in my mind they're not meant to be like super long lived. And if they are living for, let's say multiple days or weeks or months, you'll commonly probably need to come into the terminal and like merge main back into them or merge your tracking branch. And so that works really well, I'm also of the, persuasion to do squash commits for most everything, especially into like main branches. So like for me, having, potentially a bunch of like ugly looking merge commits in a long running feature branch is kind of a sin that gets washed away when you ultimately merge back into main. Like nobody's going to see that you had to, merge main 65 times back into this branch. Yeah.
And for that cleanup and maintenance, if you just, delete a workspace in intent, will that clean up the work tree on your local file system too?
Yeah, so we have two modes for it. We have an archive, which is like a softer deletion where it just doesn't show up in intent, but the work tree physically stays on disk. And then we have a delete, which, yeets the files, gets rid of them. But it's a branch and git. So it's just like everything. Once you've deleted the work tree, you're free to check it out wherever you want. And what's funny is that like in the previous, kind of prior to knowing what work trees were, I was working on a really busy project that had, a bunch of PRs that I was doing active dev in, maybe 20, 30 PRs today that I was reviewing some portion of and working on multiple features at a time. I had 3 checkouts of this project that I would manually move between and use like different VS Code themes to like know which one I'm working in, to know if I'm like in main, I'm checking out PRs and reviewing stuff, or if I'm like in my feature branch. And it was a lot to keep in my head. I had to like use different themes. And that mode of working, I feel like intent just makes, 10 times easier.
100%.
Cool. So yeah, let's see. So we've got a plan. I should have clicked approve on this a few minutes ago. So yeah, we're going to go full send on this thing. It's going to extract header and footer into reusable components, and then it's going to build out the rest of these pages, and then it's going to do a verification pass against Figma. So that was kind of at the end of the last prompt that I dropped in here to be like, hey, now that you've like gotten this stood up, it's kind of like what you have to do with a person of being like, okay, did you really do it? Did you go and play what's different and look at each one of these pages and see if you actually got all of it? Because the agents aren't perfect, they're bound to want to be helpful assistants and finish the problem, sometimes even if they didn't really do their jobs.
Sure. Got a question about code quality. Do you do anything in your workflow to detect stuff like code duplication, circular dependencies, any violations, or stuff like that?
Not beyond the normal kind of quality metrics that you get through linting, formatting, enforcement, and use unit tests. I haven't really felt like I've been burned by like a circular dependency or type of thing. The duplication thing is real though. And that's a thing that you need to catch in code review. I feel like the verifier in intent, and kind of part of the reason why it runs in this, multi-phase process where it goes from I'm going to plan, I'm going to build out a spec. I'm going to then kind of delegate and go through, and then at the end I'm going to go through and do a verification pass. Hopefully that verification pass is good enough to catch those types of things. But I feel like this is a problem that I've seen humans do in equal measure, of just being maybe a little lazy and not looking if the util for formatting the date the way that they want is actually checked into the project, or if they're adding a third or fourth copy of it. And that said, we have had good success with having a workspace where you just say, hey, go find duplicate code in this repo, find code that has similar signatures, look at utils, make sure that things are abstracted, make sure that things are, are reasonably dry. And you can usually go on a fishing trip and come back with something, because most big code bases will have an amount of duplication in them.
Nice. I've got another question about timelines for Windows and Linux for intent. Sam, do you know more than me? From what I know, it's we don't have a solid timeline.
Yeah, we don't have a solid timeline for when we're going to be releasing them, but I can say that we have internal testing that we've been working on with this, and have people hard at work to make sure that they are really high quality and meet the same expectations. So yeah, soon is what I can say. It's definitely a priority. It's we have active work going on about these.
For sure. And I'll plug that if you haven't already, you can go into augmentcode.com/intent, and the drop down here will have a button for Windows and Linux to sign up to the waitlist. So as soon as we do go live with Windows and Linux, you'll be notified. And again, a plug for Intent, a fully free app you can download. And also we are giving GPT 5.4 for free inside Intent and other Augment products too. So you can try it completely for free right now on Mac. But if you're on Windows and Linux, you can try Auggie with 5.4 for free as well, if you'd like. Thanks.
Cool. So it's cooking, but we can take a look at the dev server.
In interest for time, I have Roz ask me if you can touch on your Sentry to PR use case. I think that's a really cool thing to show as well if you have time.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah. We will. So if you click on this add context, you get a, here's a fun one. You need to go in and in accounts, sorry. We've moved this. You need to come into the connections tab and connect GitHub. This is just standard OAuth connection that lets us, interact with your GitHub on your behalf through their API. And on Sentry. So the Sentry one, you do need to mint an API key to do this right now. It's definitely on target for us to be able to, have a really smooth Grail here. I also kind of have two modes of using this. I also use the Sentry CLI, which is quite good. I have that installed and set up on my computer, and is a kind of a quick way that I can be like, hey, there's a link to the Sentry issue, take a look at it. But we do have a way here where if you click on the add context, we will pull the context for, for your specific Sentry projects.
Can you also briefly touch on what Sentry is as well, just in case?
Oh, yeah. So Sentry's super cool. So basically, every time that you have any type of, website, application, mobile app, game, anything, that thing's going to be throwing more errors than you ever see in dev mode. No matter how rigorously you test, or no matter how hard you go on the application, things will happen that you don't expect. And so, right, so Sentry is really cool. I've actually, got a lot of history with Sentry. I'd been an early customer of theirs in 2014, and then did a bunch of open source work with them in 2014 and 2015 when I was still running my consultancy. And when Sentry was 4 or 5 people, and they're a huge company right now. They're super cool. We use them basically for everything. It's the best in class solution for error tracing in products, and it gets really detailed stuff. So this is one of my favorite ones, where if you run intent out of the downloads directory, this error just spews like radioactive, like a like a piece of uranium or something, where it's not actually anything, but it's not nothing, and Sentry gets a lot of it. So for something like this, I'd say like, hey, big dog, fix this error.
Big dog.
Yeah, if you talk to the models with the big dog lingo, it'll occasionally throw you the big shaka emoji when it's done. And so this is also one where I use the rapid fire mode for stuff like this, which all it is it's going to create a workspace in the background, and like I can walk away and like hit this as many times as I need to. Yeah. So yeah, I think we've got some stuff cooking now. So it's doing the verifier stuff. I realized I had, by queuing things up to like make them fire rapidly in the stream, it hadn't delegated this extract footer. So we can just run that now. So we'll just say run it. And that's actually like a cool like
a play button
thing.
there.
Yeah. So in like the OG versions of intent, like, you know, when we were still prototyping on it, like the first take was actually that it just wrote the task list, and then you needed to like review it and click through and decide what was capable of running in parallel. And it always felt like, oh man, I've really got to think about this stuff. And then we did an experiment that was like, well, you know, the coordinator wrote this plan. It can see everything. It can read every document. It can kind of anticipate, because one of the things for complex changes that you'll find in these plans is that the agents will usually have like, oh, I'm going to work on this file. I'm going to work on like this method. I'm going to do these things to it. And we found that like with just only a smidge of prompting, we could get the delegator or the coordinator to delegate agents in waves very effectively, to the point where like it can get into you know, some bad cases occasionally where it will have agents kind of fighting over files. But in my experience, and again, somebody who's like using this thing like 10 hours a day, when multiple workspaces all day long, I rarely bump into that. But yeah, you can just click play on the tasks, and they'll go off and run themselves just like they would if the coordinator teed them
Do you
off.
mind giving a high level of kind of like the default team? I know we have a coordinator, implementer, and then if you can touch on the verifier as well, which I believe is currently going, I think that'd be great to just give people a sense of like why a team works and what it comprises of.
Yeah, exactly. So the coordinator is the main like kind of default mode. I think it's the best way to use intent is to always start with a workspace where you create a coordinator and you give it your high level plan. And this can be really high level. Now you can spend a lot of time typing out prompts, but like we found that like you can actually just say like, hey, take a look at this thing. Hey, fix this thing. And it'll go out and write a spec, and then you iterate that. So the coordinator is kind of like, you know, the boss, and then it will farm out to implementers. And so implementers are, you know, pretty generic. And here's the thing, right? Like this stuff is not a moat. It's not secret. Like here are the prompts. They're in the application. You can edit these. You can change this behavior. We tell you when you have, and like you can reset back to base if you want. But you know, this is how we're prompting this thing. And the coordinator similarly has these rules, and like how we develop these prompts over a few months of doing this, and, you know, accumulated, you know, many years of having, you know, separately, you know, worked with agents. And so essentially the main members of the team are the coordinator, the verifier, and the implementer. The implementer does stuff, the coordinator plans it, the verifier checks it. So, you know, this is that kind of, you know, it creates enough play where, right, like agents are, they're, you know, jokingly, they're stochastic parrots, right? Like they're going to do things a little bit differently each time. They're going to have some play. There's some schmear in their distribution of like, you know, what they're capable of doing. But you can steer them through in-context learning and prompting. That's effectively the prompting that we're doing, and the context that like Augment injects into this. And there's no like big hidden system prompt other than like, hey, this is your intent, you're an agent, this is what time it is, this is what model you're using, you know, here's like the working directory that you're in. And then it's just kind of, these specialist prompts for the coordinator and the implementer, right? So those things go, pretty, it's like enough that they can do really, really specialized work. Now, a cool kind of extension of this is that, like, if you have a thing that you want to do that's very specific, you can also write that. You can add your own custom specialists. That's how the UI designer started. Like, this is one that will do a bunch of design token extraction, right? Like, agents are just like people, where they are really lazy and they'll do like the inline Tailwind, pixel values and stuff instead of using the design tokens, especially if you have that pattern elsewhere in your code base because some pesky human put it in there, right? Like, they'll repeat what they see.
I got a question. What's the difference between the implementer and the developer agent?
Yeah. So the developer is essentially a combination of sorry, I'm clicking around like crazy here. The developer is like a combination of the coordinator and the implementer. Like, the developer will write plans, but the developer will also just go and do them. So like it's got a lot of these same things where it's going to write a spec, it's going to look at stuff, but it's going to just, kind of grind away at a problem without firing off a bunch of agents. And, I think that this is more of like trying to meet people where they're at with, like, this is more like how, a single threaded agent pane chat works. And there are some tasks that this is probably faster for. But also it's just like the standalone option if you don't want to have a bunch of sub processes like running, or you have something that's like maybe pretty cut and dry, and creating a custom agent with a developer will go and run that stuff down for you and still write a plan and make like good documents and do best practices for that stuff.
Another question here: are the specialist agents detected and dispatched automatically, and can you prompt to trigger and force one of them?
So the coordinator is prompted to dispatch implementers and verifiers automatically, but you can manually, through prompting, just say like, okay, so let's do this live. Hey, bro, let's use the UI designer specialist to do a separate pass at this. Thanks, dog. Really hope that this works. It will. So it's gonna read the spec.
Nice. I've also seen I think you're able to like mention the persona as well.
Plausible. Yeah, you can. Cool. You use this app every day. Didn't know that.
Experimental feature.
Yeah, well, a bunch of the folks working on this are pretty awesome, and like we have a lot of little joyful things that have been put into the application. There's a lot of care that went into some of the UI choices. Okay, let me add a task and spin up a UI designer to polish off all the pages, fixing all the issues that the verifier found.
Great. In the interest of time, I think we only have 2 minutes left, so I'll let you show off whatever else you want to show off. Any cool pro tips or tricks that we haven't covered?
Yeah. I made some notes before. So using multiple windows, that's the one thing that I haven't shown because I'm just like showing one window at a time. But like I will often have multiple windows open so that I can see if I have multiple work trees going. That's like definitely a thing that works pretty well. The MCP integrations, like I said, like the Figma MCP integrations, I was honestly shocked at how well it worked the first time that I used it, because it's always been the classic thing of like, oh man, you've got to shovel all of this stuff from one app into another. You've got to click to copy. You've got to, look at all the colors. And it's kind of, it can be hard if the Figma file, depending on how it's made. So setting up the custom MCP servers with Auggie is like super, super good. On that note, you do have to be a little bit cautious, like just going and lighting it up like a Christmas tree and having 11 MCP servers on at once is probably not a great thing because, right, like ultimately there's context management that needs to go on, and MCP servers, what they're doing is they're adding tool definitions into the system prompt. So, and that's kind of like, I think why the skills ecosystem has developed like it is, where it's a little bit more auto discoverable and stuff like that. But like the MCP stuff, when used appropriately and like in a targeted way, makes this, multiplicatively better. And yeah, I think that the other things are just like, this is I see this as like a yes and product. Like, yes, it does, make it so that you don't have to spend a lot of time in an IDE, but it doesn't obviate the need to use an IDE. So like I have an IDE open. Usually I like take a look at stuff in an IDE. It is where I'm familiar. If I'm going to be writing a lot of code and not using AI, like I'm still opening the IDE. I still use the CLI quite a bit too. So like Auggie CLI, really good. It's goated at doing stuff like when you're, especially if if I have a quick question about a code base, if I have a thing that I want to see, if I want to have, like a direct control, like the one thing that intent adds is like, this kind of additional stuff. All these things you need to do to, make it, go really far, really fast in a short amount of time. The Auggie CLI has a lot of those same features, but it's also like does it in a like super targeted way, and it's super fast and like works anywhere. So I run it on servers, I run it on my OpenClaw setup. Like I've got it everywhere. Oh, AJ, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, thank you so much, Sam. I think that's all we have time for today. I really enjoyed that. There was so much I learned from you. So yeah, thank you again. And to the audience, if you want to try Intent, you can go to augmentcode.com/intent right now and download it for free and use it for free with our GPT 5.4 Pro free promo. Yeah. Okay. I think we'll end the stream here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.